Hey there, and welcome to my first ever episode of The Point, where we just stop and get to the point on a wide variety of topics. This week's topic is improv. How do we use improv every single day, whether we're in front of groups of maybe 100, 50, maybe even one person? When we're in front of groups, even just interacting one-on-one, there's a level of improv that comes out during those conversations. So today I was able to connect with my friend Leanne Wallace, who lives down in Austin, Texas. She's a news reporter, news anchor, and she's even a comedian. So she tells us more about how improv plays a big role in her life. So take a look. The word improv, what does the word improv mean to you?
Improv to me means just making something up, like just making it up on the fly, just kind of, yeah, I don't know. That's what it means to me. What does it mean to you?
Same. I mean, for me, it's show business.
Mhm.
When we improv, it's like being more, it's being extra in some way. But there's a really fine line on being totally not authentic, where you can look, kind of like an asshole. If it-
I, yeah, I
you know,
think that it's good to have a plan. Wherever you are, like when you have a sequence, when you're riding your bike, you have a plan. But then there's also like songs, like I for for instance, I had a song, that Tuesday song, Club Going Up, that was like a remix, was like my core song. And I was like, yep, getting shredded on a Tuesday. You just kind of can like play along to, the song or whatever it is, you know?
yeah, absolutely.
A little comment about that as well. Like, let's say it's like a get it girl. You could be like, blue shirt, you are getting it, or whatever, just kind of including them in the song, or including them in whatever is happening in the room as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you call on that one person, you've hooked them in, you've gotten their attention, and
Yep.
then they're in the
Honestly,
game.
remember somebody's name. That is just like when you hear your name, I could be like, oh my God, like they notice me, they care.
So how do you know about improving, and it's like, where'd you get all that knowledge?
Well, I've always been a witty, kind of off the cuff person. But I think just doing work in television news when you are counted on to be live all the time, I think just learning how to respond and react to things that are happening live just kind of helps you become, a better improver, because you literally have to be doing that pretty much every day. And so then I was in this Texas's Funniest Reporter show last year, and it was my first time doing improv, and I won, so I was like the best. Fine, which was fun, because I've always just been kind of like a funny girl. But I think when you bring who you are to stage and kind of, perform improv, yeah, I mean, that's just like my story. I'm not like a professional improver, but I like in a comedy, but I think every day I definitely use it.
In those moments of when you're getting asked a question or when you're needing to respond to a certain situation,
Right.
when do your improving skills kick in?
I think when it comes to improving, the thing that is the most helpful thing is to listen. Like, listen to what's happening around you and then respond. So often, anytime people have a conversation like, oh, I wish I would have said this, or oh man, like you replay a situation, you're like, oh, I could have said that. It's like, if you were listening and you were present, you can show up in that moment and give the response in an improv way, and it works. Those, anytime there's those, off the cuff memorable moments, where like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they said that. That other person was listening. That other person was responding from their true self and being themselves. And I think those create memorable moments when you offer up what you have to give, but you're also responding to whoever's in front of you, your audience or the person who you're interviewing, but also just being a good listener and using your expertise and your just like prior knowledge to whatever's happening in front of you to be able to fully just show up and respond. And so I think being present is super helpful. Being present at the anchor desk, being present teaching yoga, but then also just listening, and whether that's looking around and listening to what's in my surroundings and being aware, or just literally listening to what the other person is saying, so then I can appropriately respond right away.
Have you always had this talent, or is this something that has evolved for you?
I mean, I think I've always been witty, but I think over the last couple of years, I've really learned to be a good listener. Because so often we'll be like, oh, I have something funny to say, or something clever to say, and then you'll just say it, but it's like, okay, that was totally unprompted. Like, you can't just, just, oh, I'm going to use this joke. It's like, I mean, yeah, maybe like tuck that away for a different day. But I think just being situationally surroundings is really helpful when it comes to being able to just respond to something off the cuff. It is learned. I mean, there are some people who are just like born like funny and quick. But then there's other people who it definitely can be developed, but I think it takes being present and then also listening and just responding to what's happening.
So there's some of us who are really great at improving. There are some of us that are really quick on our feet when responding to certain situations. And then there's some that aren't. So for someone who maybe isn't as quick to respond to any sort of situation, no matter what you do for a profession, or even when you're out with your friends, you say listening is step number one. Absolutely. And I totally agree with you. What else would you maybe recommend to someone who doesn't quite have that talent to maybe be extroverted? Maybe they're a bit more introverted. When responding to any sort of situation, we need to have those thoughts kick in where we can just simply connect with the people around us.
I think wanting to connect with the people around us, and I think wanting to fully show up and to wanting to do all that, like that could even be the step before, or the next step, just actually wanting to be there. But I think for somebody who quick thinking might not, come as naturally to them, I just think being not afraid to be yourself and to say something funny or to say something that just whatever comes up. You don't want to be somebody else. Like if you're not funny, you don't want to all of a sudden just start telling over the top jokes that aren't you. Because I think that when you're a performer, when you're an anchor, when you're a cycle instructor, I mean, people show up because they want to see you. But I think if you really are being you and you're comfortable with who you are, you can be comfortable with sharing that side of you and your little quirks as well.
I think that's what it really comes down to, is when we're completely ourselves, that's kind of the secret.
Exactly. I think that people can tell, when people are trying too hard or if it's not coming off as genuine. But if you're being genuine and your quick responses are a little goofy or a little silly or not like traditionally funny, I think that if you're coming off as yourself, people will still respond and they'll like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Has there ever been a time where you were improving and it was a total fail? Maybe you didn't respond the right way, or?
Yeah, I mean, last night I was teaching yoga, and it was like kind of like the peak of the workout. People were really tired, and then after I had them all sit down, like take a sip of water, we were going to do some core work. I'm like, how are we? How are you guys? And like two people were like, good. I'm like, all right, two of you are good. I hope the rest of you are also okay. Because sometimes like the whole room's tired, or sometimes everybody's like, woo, and they're excited, and you just have to be like, all right. Well, I'm glad that two of you are good. You just gotta, I mean, it's fine, and then after that, people kind of like laughed and like warmed up. But I mean, or just even like if the joke, if it's just kind of like inappropriate, you just have to know your audience.
So here's another question. So let's say you are, have you ever been in a situation where you're in a group setting where you're the one who's leading the conversation, so presenting in some sort of way, where you have to connect with the back row just as much as you need to with the front row. So connecting, looking at all of those people around you. When you're doing comedy, it's a great example. Connecting with every single person.
Mm-hmm.
How is that for you? Is that something that's easy to do? And how does your improving skills kick in when you don't even know that person?
There are sometimes when people just get the back row because there was no other seats. But then I feel like sometimes there are people who don't want to be acknowledged. They don't want to be connected with, right? So they sit in the back row. But honestly, if they're showing up, it's your prerogative whether you want to include them if they want to be included or not. But I mean, sometimes it's just as much as just as far as connecting with them. I mean, for me, like touch is my love language. And so I'll just go up and just be like, just like give them an assist or something when it comes to like a yoga class.
Some of the things that we're talking about right now, it's someone watching this would be like, of course I need to be authentic. Of course I need to remember people's names. Of course I need to do these things. But I feel like as performers, these are simple concepts that are totally missed.
It because you include them in the show. You know what I mean? You include them in the performance. It's not you sitting up at your bike, me sitting up at the anchor desk performing. But if you can just, somehow bring them in, they're like, oh, I'm a part of the show now.
Mm-hmm. So when you're talking to a lens, reporting on a story, anchoring at the desk, you have to connect with viewers through a lens, and you have to hope that they're maybe laughing at your jokes a little bit or responding to your commentary in a way that you think that they're going to be responding. So how do you position your body? I mean, how do you like talk through your nonverbals to get them included? Because that is a part of improv.
I think like with my facial expressions too, like sometimes I'll be like, and I'll just kind of look around, or I'll just like, if I'm just being like, just kind of like your body language can also just be improv, right? If you're just kind of like shrug emoji or something. But I think that like, I mean, also it's good feedback from Twitter, and people are like, you're funny. And you're like, thank you. The news is not be serious. But I think, there's a fine line between doing your job, which for me would be to anchor the news or to teach a yoga class, but also sprinkle in your personality and to sprinkle in that stuff that keeps them watching. They're like, oh my God, I never know what she's going to say, which makes her more special to watch than a different channel who might give me the same information, but because there's something about her, there's something that she sprinkles in that is so authentically her that I want to watch. I mean, I don't know what she's going to say. And I think that's, I mean, for me, being given the platform to show up as myself, but also be a professional, but sprinkle in, little bits here and there of improv. I think that does separate me from a different channel that might just be, I'm just reading the news, I'm just riding the bike, I'm just giving instructions. And so I do think that if you can pull out those little moments of authenticity, but also listening and being situationally aware of, context too, like context of, is this an appropriate story to make a joke about? Do I know my audience? Like, this is Austin, Texas. Like, will people be offended by this? And so I think a combination of being comfortable with being yourself, but also knowing your audience, but then also knowing that, it's okay. It's just a newscast. It's just a bike class. But at the same time, those little tweaks, those little bursts of off the cuff commentary, they can, people want to watch, people want to show up, because it's the unpredictable sometimes that will keep people coming back. So they're like, oh man, I don't know what I'm going to get, but I'm looking forward to whatever is on offer.
Yeah, absolutely. You totally nailed it. I really resonated a lot with the comment where you sprinkle in the parts of yourself, you sprinkle in that improv, when, oh my gosh, I just totally lost my train of thought. But the reality is, when we're interacting with when you're interacting with viewers, when you're teaching in a class, this is what I was going to say. You're following a recipe when you're at work, when you're on air. The recipe is what the producers put in the script. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the recipe is getting the facts. There's an order to that information. Viewers don't necessarily know that, but you do. Right. But you've got the recipe that you're sticking to, the facts, the delivery of the content, the confidence, the looking at the camera, the banter with the interviewee and felt like co-anchors, all of that stuff. But the special part, the sprinkle, the special sauce is when your commentary pops out. And it's when you're totally authentic, but it's those little sprinkles of commentary that I believe connect with viewers more than that recipe. They're believing you. It's that trust.
I 100% believe that. I mean, for me as a television viewer, I watch anchors that I like to see anchoring, and I'm like, you feel a little connection when you hear their little comments or their little jokes or their little whatever. You're like, I'm getting what I need, a newscast, but I'm also getting what I want, which is somebody with a personality, somebody who's going to show up, somebody who keeps me on their toes or my toes, who everybody's toes. And so I do think that it separates what could be a mundane newscast, what could be any ordinary spin class, to it goes, there's good, better, and best, right? You can go to a good spin class, pick, oh, I got a good workout. You can do a great anchor, a great newscast, pick, I got a great workout. Or you could do better or best. And I feel like when you are your best, when you are authentic, and when you sprinkle in your personality and people resonate with it, that can bring just something that anybody can do. Anybody can sit in front of a TV and read. Anybody could hop up on a bike and lead people through a class. But if you sprinkle in those unexpected moments that draw people in, that make people excited to come back, that people feel like they can connect with and resonate with, I really do think that people, personalities, performers have the ability to take something that's great and make it best.
Totally agree. I have another thought as you were just talking about that. I think when one performer gets so far along in their career, they think they're good, that they've got it, that the evolution process is over, like mic drop, I get it, I'm great. Do you believe that?
I think that the first part is getting the recipe down. Once you have the recipe down, you have the ability to sprinkle in your special sauce, right? And so I think that like plateauing, I mean, if you want to plateau, but I mean, we all have room to grow. I mean, I'm growing every day. And so sometimes people will be like, wow, that was like an amazing whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you. Because you can show up, do the work, follow the recipe, which is fine. But I think as a person who is really into personal growth and development, I don't want to just show up and do my job. I want to like show up and be like the best damn anchor. I want to show up and be the best damn yoga instructor. Anybody can follow a recipe, right? Even if you're good at following that recipe. But I think if you actually fully show up and you're fully present and you're fully connecting and engaging and sprinkling in your personality and listening and being quick to respond to things and including people in your performance, I think that's not plateau.
Totally agree. Has there ever been a time where you wanted to try something new in a newscast or in a yoga class or in your next comedy experience that's about to happen? Is there something that you wanted to try? Two-part question, where it was a fail and then the ones that were a win. And I believe that you grow from both of them, but tell me about those experiences.
Yeah, I think it just depends. You can't please everybody. So Kanye West was tweeting something. It was about Donald Trump, right? He like had a Donald Trump signed hat and like the internet went freaking crazy. And so I made a joke so there was a tease and it was like, oh, and more on Kanye West's Twitter feed. And then my co-anchor turned to the meteorologist and was like, oh, I feel some heat out there. And I'm like, wait, are you talking about Kanye's Twitter feed or the weather? And so all of my producers, they loved it. They I could hear them audibly laugh from the other room. Our consultant, he comes in, he's like, why'd you touch on Kanye? Why'd you bring that up? And I was like, because it was a funny joke. And he's like, no, he didn't like it. He was like, he didn't like it. He thought it was too provocative. And he was like, we need to get right to weather. You're just wasting time, like talking and telling jokes. So it's not for everybody. One of our consultants, he did not like that. And my boss, my news director, she loves it. My producers, they love it. One person came in, a consultant that we pay a ton of money to consult us. He didn't like my Kanye West joke. I stand by it, by the way. It was really funny and perfectly timed. But I was like, okay. And I kind of had the attitude like, all right, the consultant says he didn't like my commentary. I'm just not going to say anything. So for the entire week, when we were bantering with an anchor, I was just like, good morning, I'm Leanne Wallace. And I just like didn't say anything. And my producers were like shaking me. They're like, please come back to us. We need you. And I was like, and I took it personally. I was like, no, whoever like didn't like my commentary. So I'm just like not going to. And then you just got to be like, you know what? That is one person. You can't not be yourself because one person didn't like it. And so I've shaken it off and I am myself again. And yeah, the show must go on, even if one person maybe didn't like it.
It's great advice. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about being an improv expert or an expert at just, going on the fly?
Honestly, I love, this is like totally the last question. Like anything else you want to add? Somebody used to be a reporter. I think just showing up as yourself, not being afraid to show up, listening to people, listening to your music, listening to the audience, reading the room, being comfortable with working the room. And yeah, I guess just being comfortable with who you are and letting that show through in your performances. You can really take that recipe that and make it like some freaking Top Chef shit if you want.
I love that. And so when is your next comedy show?
September 10th, I believe. It's a
Awesome.
Sunday and I got 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Are you ready for it?
Kind of. I started just kind of thinking about things that I'm going to write.
Okay. Well, I want to hear all about it.
Yeah. I'm excited. It's funny because they're very like self-deprecating. I'm like, oh, so this happened. But yeah.
And where are you going to be doing comedy at in Austin?
Yes. Cap City Comedy Club.
Cap City Comedy Club, September 10th. What time?
I think it starts at like 7 or something. It's whatever that Sunday in September. I think it's around the 10th. Or maybe it's the 16th. I don't remember. Something
like that. Okay. Well, Leanne, thanks so much for joining us on this episode of The Talk, where we're talking all about improv. Thank you so much. And we'll be on again next week, guys, for another episode of The Talk. I'm JR. This is my friend Leanne, and we'll see you next time. Later, guys. Leanne, thank you again so much. So, guys, what did you learn about improv skills? How can you maybe weave some of these tips and tricks into your day-to-day interactions? So, be sure to comment below with your thoughts, and we'll see you next time where we just get to the point. I'm JR. See you guys.